Well, good evening and welcome to another special interview here on Tales of a City. Tonight it's my great pleasure to have a true legendary Australian musician. Would you please welcome Mr. Jim Hermel. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you, Jethro, and thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Are you well?
All good. All good under the circumstances. If we can say we're well, we're going pretty well.
Ain't that the truth? Matey, before we get into elements of your career, because you've had a very long and extraordinary career, I discovered something very interesting. You're also an author.
Well, you may say that, Jethro, but the books I've written, the one that was first published a couple of years ago, took me 50 years to write.
Was that 12 Tales of Terror?
That was 12 Tales of Terror. It was, 12 Tales. Well, driving through the country, you know, and going to places that got a lot of time on your hands.
Yes.
And you go through a lot of interesting places. So I used to love the Twilight Zone when I was a kid,
Oh,
you
so
know,
did I.
and Alfred Hitchcock's Presents and all those sort of stories. So I wrote this 12 Tales of Terror, sort of based on the Twilight Zone. So yes, it's and it's done well. It was published in England and
Yes, it's gone far and wide.
yes, in America and England. So I mean, it hasn't made me rich or anything by a long shot, but I enjoyed doing
But
it.
it's a huge jump between being a musician to a horror story writer. It's not your average, really.
Well, I can tell you some horror stories about being a musician.
Yeah, I can well imagine. Well, speaking of that, being a musician, of course, you were recently inducted into the South Australian Music Hall of Fame. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But you're also inducted into the Hall of Hands in Tamworth. weren't you?
Yes. Lucky enough to do that too, Jethro. So
Extraordinary.
these are things, of course, obviously you don't aim to do, and when they come up,
Yeah.
it's a great thrill.
But I
That
would,
road is rocky and it won't be rocky long. Lord, another girl down took my baby and gone. Well, I wish to the Lord to bring him back to me. Yeah, I wish to the Lord to bring him back to me. But they both ain't away, leaving me in misery.
and with the amount of miles that you've put on the road, I mean, you've worked all over the world with some of the greatest artists ever. Tell us about some of that.
Well, I think one of the greatest surprises that I had, I was playing in Texas, and just before I'd gone over to America, I saw Willie Nelson and Willie Nelson's band, at Memorial Drive. And anyway, I went down there and I was doing a guest spot at this place, and I went in into the side door, and the guys said, "Oh, you're on next, come on, ready." So I grabbed my guitar, I jumped up, and I turned around to tell the guys what key the song was on, and it was Willie Nelson's band.
Oh my Lord!
His whole band. So I got to play with them, and that was a real thrill.
That would have to be a major highlight.
Oh yeah, oh yes, it was. As a matter of fact, the bass player, the late Chris Etheridge, when Willie wasn't playing, him and I made a band and used to play around Texas. So it worked out well from that point of view as well.
Did you get to meet Willie?
One of the disappointments of my life, the guys took me out there the next morning. They said, "You're going to meet Willie. You're going to meet Willie." So we went out there, beautiful big mansion, 9-hole golf course out there. They were all playing golf, the guys were, but they didn't realise that Willie had gone to San Francisco that morning. So I didn't.
Missed it by
that much. But I was driving around with this guy, you see, and we were talking about music, and he said, "Oh, you do music in Australia, do you?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I do a bit of music."
Not just a bit.
And I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "Oh, and I write songs. I wrote Delta Dawn and Reuben James." And so,
wow.
So now seeing that I always read every song, every time I get a record, I read who wrote it. So I knew that it was a guy by the name of Alex Harvey. And I said, "Oh, you're Alex Harvey." And I said, you wrote the song with Larry Collins, was one of the guitarists I used to admire many years ago, and he said, yeah. So I got to meet Alex, but I must quickly I bore everybody with this story, but I must quickly tell because...
Oh no, go ahead.
Because this is the greatest for me. When I was a kid, I used to watch the Nelsons, because James Burton used to play guitar on for Ricky Nelson, you see, and I've followed him all my life. James Burton, he's just my hero, the greatest guitarist in my opinion. And anyway, when we were over in America in 2017, we were doing the Jimmy Rogers Festival, and the next in Meridian, Mississippi, the next state was Louisiana, and I knew that the old theatre, I'm just trying to think...
Grand Ole Opry?
No, the Louisiana Hayride.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the Louisiana Hayride. I knew that there was a 7-foot statue of James Burton out the front of it.
Right.
And also with Elvis, and I mean, I love Elvis too. But, so I said to Virginia and Peter, Virginia's brother and sister, I said, "Look, we were going down to New Orleans, but I said, look, I really want to go across to Shreveport, even though it's 80 miles out of our way. I really want to go because I want to get a photo of me next to James Burton's statue." Of course. So because I've just followed this guy for 50 years. So anyway, we went over there, and as I'm sort of getting the photo next to James Burton's statue, the door opened of the Louisiana Hayride, and the guy came out and he said, "Look, I'm the stage manager." He said, "Look, I get really bored just sitting around. If I see anybody out the front, I invite them in." So
I molest them.
Yeah. Just so we went in, and he said, got up and he said, "This is where Elvis stood, and this is where Johnny Cash stood," and he opened up, showed us all the museum, and we were there for about an hour. Anyway, when we finished, and I was just so grateful, and I said, "Look, thanks so much. I'm just so thrilled to see this. We never expected to see this." And I said, all I did was come over here to get a photo of me with James Burton's statue.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, James, his studio's just over the road. I saw him there this morning." He said, "Go over and have a look, he might still be there."
Oh, stop it.
Went over there, knocked on the door, out came James Burton. Oh, well, I couldn't... it was one of the greatest moments of my life. So that's just an interesting little story that can happen. And people say to you, you know, what's your highlight of your trips to America? Well, you can't, because they happen every day, Jethro. Things happen every day.
They're very friendly over there.
Oh,
too,
yeah,
aren't
yeah,
they?
yeah.
I made a film a little while back about Mark Pedler from 5KA. Remember Mark
Yeah,
Pedler?
yeah.
And he went on a journey to the Deep South to find the crossroads.
Oh, yes.
Indeed, and had extraordinary times. So I went to Elvis's birthplace, all that sort of thing. I love Elvis. I wanted to book for a Elvis tribute show the other day, and you had to book by phone. I had one of those automated money systems. Yeah, you had to press 1 for the money, 2 for the show.
Oh, good on you, Jethro.
One tries. Now, you've been in so many bands over the years. Do you have any favourites?
Well, I guess it's like, I guess if you've had many marriages over the year...
Yeah, you can't pick your favourite children.
The obvious...
Or wives.
That's right, the obvious thing is you're going to say, well, the marriage I'm in.
Yes, of course.
No, I have to say the band that I'm in with Virginia and Virginia's sister, Runaway Dixie, and we also do the Jim Hermel band. That is doing terrific because I love bluegrass music.
Me too.
Yeah, and we do we do the bluegrass thing and we do the old rock and roll. So that is, but of course, you know, many Nosmo King. I really enjoyed that.
Well,
band.
speaking of that, Bruce Packer is in the room here today.
Yes,
Indeed.
and Lee Langdon.
Yes,
Lee on drums. For the people who don't know, Lee playing drums with us today. Lee and I met when we were 5 years old. We met at Brompton Kindergarten.
Really?
Yeah. And then when we were 15, at the Brompton, we went to the Brompton Primary School and so we started our first band that played in September 1961. So over 60 years,
wow.
Lee and I have played off and on together. So it's just, and Lee was in Nosmo King as well.
You don't get that long for murder.
No,
Oh, Lord. Now, tell me this, speaking of Runaway Dixie, we were very fortunate to have you guys perform recently at the Support Act lunch at the Highway Hotel.
Yep.
And I too love bluegrass, and there is nothing better than this man with a banjo in his hand. I just adore it. But what's it like working and having to, I mean, you're spending a lot of time with your wife, professionally, personally, so do you get sick of each other?
Well, funnily enough,
We'll have to ask Virginia.
Yes. No, look, that was just one of those incredible coincidences that we met. We all love the same music, we love the same, we're playing instruments together, working together. It's just, well, you can see when I'm up there and I see Virginia play guitar and listen to her.
Yeah,
it's
amazing.
just unbelievable. I love it. And when we do the Jim Hermel band and I often do some drumming for Virginia and Lynette, and I say, well, I've got the best seat in the house. I just sit on the drums and I listen to those, and it's just magnificent. Jethro.
It's a match made in heaven.
Oh, yes, you're right there.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much for your time and your extraordinary talent today. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank Jim Hermel.
Thank you.